He's right, that's true. Not many people can survive a gunshot wound to the head. In his case, doctors said at one point he had a 1% chance of making it.
Yeah, many of us clearly remember that day when that KCPD officer, Tyler Moss, was shot. When we heard he'd been shot in the head in the newsroom, many of us feared the worst. But that's not where his story ended. In fact, he told me it's just the beginning. Was this a miracle?
Oh, definitely a miracle. That's the only way to put it.
Ask anyone familiar with Tyler Moss's story, and they'll agree it's a story about miracles. They'll also probably tell you it's a story about heroes, those in and out of uniform, taking the right steps at the right time, racing against the clock. But first, like any good story, we have to start at the beginning. Those were the frantic calls on July 2nd, 2020, for an officer down.
3 patients, 1 of the police officers shot.
That officer was Tyler Moss.
I don't remember going to the call. I don't remember anything after that.
But his fellow officers and his family remember every detail vividly. He and his partner pulled up to this Kansas City McDonald's to investigate a man with a gun. Tyler was shot in the head shortly after stepping out of the car. That's when Sergeant Jason Childers arrived.
As I passed by some of the officers, I could see like 3 to 4 officers carrying the lifeless body of one of our officers. As I pulled up, just hastily loaded him in my police car and drove him to a Truman Medical Center. The officers that rode with me did a great job of talking to him, keeping him, he was unresponsive, but kept talking to him the whole time.
Doctors later told Tyler, had officers waited for an ambulance to take him to the emergency room, he likely wouldn't have made it, with minutes making the difference between life and death.
The entire trauma team, we quickly put a breathing tube in and got him ready for a very rapid CAT scan of his brain. And at that time, it was very evident that he had some significant damage and bleeding to the right side of his brain.
Lucky for Tyler, the bullet only entered the right side of his brain, giving him a better chance of survival.
And you could see the bullet caused a lot of artifact in the CT scan.
First, though, doctors had to remove part of his skull to alleviate the swelling.
The problem with the brain is that it's inside the skull, and there's no room for that swelling to grow. And so if that lays unchecked, then that's going to squeeze on the good part of the brain, and that's going to cause it to have no more blood flow, and that's going to be the demise of a patient.
While Tyler was on an operating table fighting for his life, fellow officers flocked to the hospital.
It was like a blink of an eye, and it was 6 or 7 hours later. It was dark, and it was almost midnight. And there were dozens, hundreds of officers, both inside and outside the hospital.
It was support that helped his family through those early, tense moments.
It's our blue family. Never really understood what it was about until we saw firsthand.
In the end, the surgery was a success. The bullet was left in his brain to avoid further damage caused by removing it, and his skull was reattached, but it was still touch and go.
Oh, he didn't look like Tyler. He was, it was pretty traumatic looking at him.
Still, he was alive, and in 2 weeks, he was strong enough to head to a rehabilitation facility in Colorado. Again, his KCPD family was there, lining the road at the airport as a special send-off. It was an emotional boost he'd need as he tackled the next challenge.
I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk. I couldn't tie my shoes. I couldn't bathe myself. I mean, there's a lot of things that people take for granted that I had to relearn how to do.
Was there ever a point where you thought, this is it, I'm done, I quit?
There was never a time where I said I wanted to give up, because that's not the person who I was raised to be.
Within months, his hard work paid off, and he returned home to Kansas City, where once again, KCPD officers were standing by. This time, though, they were able to see the officer they thought they'd lost back on his own feet. Now those feet are leaving footsteps for new recruits to follow on the obstacle course and beyond. Tyler returned to work at the police academy, serving as a mentor to officers in training. Whether it's at work or speaking to groups, he's sharing his story in the hopes of helping others.
I don't know the reason why I was saved, but obviously there's a reason for it, and whether it's to inspire other people to, you know, through their problems, through their tough times that they're going through, or whether it's for me to be a motivational speaker or, you know, to do something with the police department in capacity or whatever it might be, that's the reason why I think I was saved.
And those who know him agree. He was saved for a reason.
If nothing else, he's a gift that's been given to our organization.
His strength and courage is just unmatched.
For Tyler, he says sometimes it's just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other and staying determined to make your own happy ending, whatever challenges come your way.
Oh, Tyler, your conviction, your determination, your faith are just beautiful.